Metaphor ReFantazio, a hit JRPG from Atlas, the company behind SMT and Persona, that took the internet by storm, sold 1 million copies in less than 24 hours, set a record for the company even while being a new IP. Now, I played this game for 200 hours. I'll be honest, I'm addicted, but I'm here to review it fairly. I'll look at the good parts, the bad parts, and yeah, let's just get right into it. This video is going to be segmented into three main parts, so let's get right into the story. So, on to with the story. So, I'm gonna give a score, an individual score for every part, but at the end of the review, I'll give an overall score for the game. Now, the main story is, in my opinion, definitely one of the best parts about the game. The story is a solid 9 out of 10. The plot always keeps you hooked. I love that formula in JRPGs where it's kind of a trip. The main characters, the party, travels around the world and you get to explore the world while having a certain, a thread, a plot keeping you involved in that trip. You don't travel randomly. There is a story that makes that trip make sense. In Metaphor ReFantazio, there's always a clear goal at the end of every arc, and that's very satisfying. The best example is at the beginning, you're like, okay, I have to infiltrate the military. I don't know what's going to happen. It's just kind of hyped. And then shit happens. Then you're like, okay, now I'm in this tournament. Let's go there. Like, wait, there's like we have to get ahead. And then all the entire arc about finding a head for the tournament for the kings, and then the payoff at the end when you present it in front of everyone, it's always very satisfying. And as soon as an arc ends, it sends you again on another journey and back to back, and the story never, honestly, never felt boring to me. The voice acting complements the story very well. I played the game twice, once in Japanese, once in English, and honestly, it's phenomenal. The story is very, very good. Now, for people that are not used to the Persona formula, you might have found the game lacking in terms of side story content, because in terms of side quest stories, the only thing we have is followers, and followers can be a bit uninteractive for some people, since they're basically just like light novels, right? There's not much gameplay in them. Now, I do like how they did implement some gameplay in them, like the time where you have to defend the city with Barden, etc. There's many interesting fights that take place. But yeah, like I said, the story content is limited to followers. Now, the story in the followers quest is very high quality. I think that in my opinion, this is the best social link content we've had in any like Persona game. This is obviously completely subjective, but I feel like some of these stories really went beyond the social links. Like in Persona 3 or Persona 4 and 5, social links always felt confined in a certain story, and they wouldn't really go outside of the box. These social links, these follower quests in Metaphor went far and beyond. There's literally, I was shocked at how like shocking and how the scale of the things happening in some of those follower quests, like the story for Alonso, which in my opinion is one of the best. I was hooked in that story. That story almost made me cry. Like the fact that you go from, well, I'll put a spoiler warning right now. Spoiler warning. The fact that like right off the bat, the village he's been working for this entire time has been burned to the ground. His mother dead. All of that in one episode of the full arc. Like, what the fuck is going on? This was amazing. Also, the Barden story was completely like, it was very engaging, very good. A lot of heartwarming and touching stories, like the one with Brigitte and Maria. very, very good. Like I said, the story, the side quests, the side stories are very good, but they are limited. I understand people coming from other games, they maybe not like this formula of side stories, but it is what it is. What we have though is amazing. Let's go to the next category. Now for the characters. The characters are honestly phenomenal, but I have one main criticism. So this game is all about racism, right? And the world they live in is inherently racist. Now, I don't really like how the main characters are like most of them are completely good, and then the villains, which we'll talk about later, are more complex. But for example, Juna, the main character, Stroll, Hulkenberg, they're all people of honor, of valor, of values. They're the good guys. They're very, very good. And which is why I found some characters like Heisme and Basilio very interesting, because they're very complex. I might make an entire video on Heisme, actually, now that I think about it. This character is very, very interesting, and he's honestly carrying the character category for me, which is a 9 out of 10. The Heisme has some racism in him, and it doesn't make him a bad person or a bad character. It just makes him an interesting and compelling character because he deals with that. Because you need to think about it. Why are people racist? People are usually racist for two main reasons. One, they grew up in a racist environment. Two, because they had a bad experience with a certain ethnic group / race. People don't people are not like born racist, right? And so Heisme, for those who follow the story, had a lot of animosity towards the Paripus tribe, which is like the Beastmen type of tribe, and we don't really see it directly, but we see him slowly change his stance on it. Like at the beginning, he openly tells Basilio and his brother Fidelio, "Yeah, we're just talking about me hating your kind. By the way, I don't like you guys." But without saying it directly, we see that like as the story progresses, he gets better, and I think this is a very refreshing character. It's very hard to depict racism in a nuanced way, and I think they did it well with some characters. So the party members, they're all great. I love them. The cast of characters is so, now yes, like I said, in terms of the racist like problems they have, yes, they're a bit one dimensional, but in terms of character, all of them have insane growth. Like it's crazy how from beginning to the end you can see them growing with the main character and in their follower rank. Like I start doing the follower quests for each of the party members. It's almost like mandatory if you want to enjoy the entire like story of the main characters. It's just so good. Now for the side characters, because it's not only the party members. The side characters are very good, and some of them I want to mention are obviously Nuras. Nuras is kind of a main character, but since he's not a party member, I'm just putting him as a side character. He's amazing. He's amazing. Everyone loves Nuras. Like I said, in the story itself, you don't see much change in him, but if you did his follower quest, you see a very refreshing and mature side of him at the end. While he he makes a hard decision at the end. And I love him for that. One side character that honestly is underrated, and I wish he was a follower, and I'm seeing that many of you guys agree with me, is Batlin. Batlin, or Batlin, I don't know how to pronounce it. Batlin, let's say Batlin. That guy, amazing. You see how in the beginning, he's kind of like there for the church, he's doing his job, but then he gets excited, he gets interested in the stakes of the future of this country. Then he takes an interest in us and is curious about, hey, yeah, he's an elder, everyone hates him, but I wonder what he's doing. then as he learns more about us, he takes us. He slowly becomes our ally. Let's be honest. And at the end of the game, he becomes kind of a key character in helping the people open their eyes. And I find this character absolutely wonderful. Now, the party members are good, the main characters are good, the side characters are good, but I feel like where this game truly shines is the villains, the antagonists. Now, before we address the elephant in the room, which is the most charismatic character in the game, let's talk about some of the sub-villains, like Zorba, like Glodell, like minor spoiler alert, Joanna. These characters are phenomenal. Zorba's character is so sad and complex. He's a mixed race person who's been persecuted. He has many reasons to follow Luis. And just seeing him, his dialogue at the beginning and at the end of the game, when you fight him for the second time, there's just so much complexity and nuance in his character. Joanna, in my opinion, is one of the best characters in the game. That arc, in my opinion, was the best arc before the end of the game. The Martyra arc. The pain she had from losing her child. I won't go into details because this video is going to end up being too long, but if you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. These antagonists were so complex, so nuanced. You couldn't really hate them for too long. And you either love them or you just like appreciate them and respect them for how good of an antagonist they are. Same thing for Gulodo, which sadly left us too quickly. I wish his character was developed further, but he was such a nuanced character too. And obviously, let's just talk about the guy, the man himself, Luis. What a wonderful character. I just recently made a video about the Luis ending, showcasing that, and I've seen a lot of people in the comment just talking about how much they love this character, and I can't agree enough. This guy is the guy. He's the man. So he has a lot of reasons to see the world burn. But then when you realize why he wants to see the world burn, how is he gonna make the new world? All the reasons behind this, all the problems that led to this, and you understand that this antagonist makes the game. Metaphor ReFantazio is Luis, the fight against him and what he stands for, and is that the right thing? Now, I think everyone agrees with the fact that nuanced antagonists are always the best antagonists. And Luis honestly deserves a video of his own, but I feel like antagonists, side characters, antagonists and villains in this game are definitely a 10 out of 10, and the shining factor in the Metaphor ReFantazio story. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, enjoyed the Louis character as much as me, and that's it for the characters. Let's talk about the nitty-gritty, the gameplay. So the gameplay of Metaphor ReFantazio is a very, very interesting one. So let's talk about the first and most important thing, the combat system. So it's a turn-based game, not for everyone, but I feel like this is one of the turn-based games that can really, really make people take interest into the turn-based format. This one was very refreshing. It's a kind of a mix between SMT and Persona, which is the two main IPs that the company has, with basically the Persona UI. It's the Persona UI 1-for-1 with the turn icon, the action icon or turn icon system, which is very, very good. So in Persona, when you hit someone when you hit an enemy in their weakness, you knock them down, and then you play again. In this game, when you hit a weakness or a crit, you only consume half an action instead of acting again, which is sometimes achieve the same thing, but it's very interesting because you have a specific amount of turn icons, and then you consume half. If you know it, then you see, okay, this party member consumes half an icon, this party member is going to consume a full icon. Then you can try to predict your turn entirely. Skipping also consumes half turn, and then give your turn to another party member that can maybe do something better than you. And I feel like this game really rewards thinking and strategizing. Like, the game is not that hard, even when played on hard mode. But as soon as you let your guard down, you can get fucked. You can get fucked if you're too cocky and you just don't use, for example, oh, I'm gonna save some MP. I'm pretty sure I don't need to do anything. I don't need to think. Just you know, just click, and then out of nowhere, bam, you're dead. If you're playing on hard mode, they abuse your weakness. And yeah, this game is very, very, very like strategic, and the combat system is very good. It's not too hard, not too easy. I feel like for a turn-based game enjoyer, this game is the perfect game. Like, it has anything, almost everything you want, almost everything you can ask for in a turn-based game. And for someone who doesn't, not really a big fan of turn-based, but doesn't really hate it either, I feel like you will enjoy this game for most likely. Now, let's talk about the dungeons. The dungeons, this is probably the biggest point of contention about the game, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video. It is a bit disappointing. Like, obviously, I love this game. I played 200 hours. I obviously love this game. But I can't, obviously, I have to be fair, you know? Give credit where credit is due, and criticize when it's time to criticize. The dungeon content is a bit lacking. Not only that, but it gets a bit repetitive. So there's two aspects to it. First of all, the themes and the nature of the dungeons. And the second aspect of that is the quantity of dungeon content. I think anyone who played, like, for example, Persona 5, which is like the most recent new Persona game, if you don't count Persona 3 Reload because that's the remake, is that you, in the beginning of the game, there's the prologue. Then there's the first big dungeon. Then there's the second big dungeon. And then the third dungeon is it's not even a dungeon. It's like an infiltration. And then there's a third big dungeon, which is the temple. And then that's it. These are the only 3 dungeons that, like, big main story dungeons before the end of the game, which is when you infiltrate the palace. Now, that itself can count as a dungeon, but before that, before you reach the final act, there's only 3 main dungeons in like an 80-hour game, 100-hour game. Now, if that's your first Atlas game, some people might have not noticed, but there is the dungeon content is a bit lacking. I mean, in Altabury, you didn't have a main dungeon. Like, the Opera House infiltration was barely a dungeon. I mean, it was really cool. Don't get me wrong. I loved the Opera House arc. I was on the edge of my seat, but the dungeon was not a dungeon, right? It just wasn't. It's not only was it very, very short, but there was nothing in it. You just, like, go up, beat some enemies, and that's it. It took like 5 to 10 minutes. In Brilhaven, same thing. The dungeon wasn't really a dungeon. There was 2 infiltration sequences, 3 mini bosses, and that's it. Compared to the 3 other big main dungeons, you can clearly see that they're not main dungeons. Now, coming from Persona, because this game is clearly very similar to Persona, but compared to Persona 5 or even Persona 4, which is very, very old and wasn't as like complete and as modern in terms of gameplay, it kind of falls short. Like, Persona 5 has like double the main dungeons in a game that's just as long, and it's a bit frustrating. Now, the dungeons we have are very good, and I feel like a lot of people will disagree with this. I mean, not with the fact that they're good, but with the criticism I just said before. Some people will agree with me that there wasn't enough dungeons, and some people might find it like good that they went like outside of the usual formula. Like it doesn't have to be like a main dungeon every location. Sometimes you can switch it up. Like for example with the Louis infiltration. And I feel like if that was a one-time thing, like the Louis infiltration thing, like the fact that Brylehaven arc didn't really have a big main dungeon, I feel like would have been fine. But the problem is that there's many other parts of the game that were just felt lacking in terms of dungeon, and I feel like that's a bit unfortunate. What makes this thing worse is that the side dungeons are also very, very repetitive. Now, in the first like 50 hours of the game, maybe, the game is amazing. Like maybe 35 hours, the dungeons are amazing. But as you progress, look, I think this game is a masterpiece. I'm not saying this game is bad. Obviously not. I am addicted to the game. I made a channel about this game. But you can't... Like, you are gonna feel a bit frustrated or just maybe a bit bored of the side dungeons. They kind of are the same. Oh, a forest maze with kind of reskinned. Oh, a catacombs. Oh, it's a cave with just different mobs and different colors on the walls. Like, it's the same thing. There's like maybe four different patterns, four different kind of like dungeons. And in terms of themes, it's always the same thing. It's like, oh, it's dark and gloomy, like, but yeah. So it's a very small rant about the dungeons that some people might agree with, some people might disagree with. Well, you know, I have to criticize the game where the game deserves criticism. And some people are theorizing that the academy was supposed to be a dungeon. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense. Imagine if like you went to the academy and then you had to do the dungeon to then get to Rilla at the end of the dungeon. That would have been really good. And apparently, some people think it might have been cut because the game was too long. Or they might be keeping a dungeon for the DLC. A DLC has been kind of confirmed. Now we don't know if it's gonna be like, I mean, a DLC. Some other Metaphor content has been confirmed. We don't know if it's gonna be a DLC or like a definitive edition of the game, like Persona games. But yeah. Now the dungeons we did have, like I said, were amazing. So I won't be too harsh on the dungeons. I'll give them a solid 7 out of 10. And we'll move on. We'll move on to the bosses. The bosses in this game, I loved them. Especially in the beginning. Like, I feel like later in the game, if you were kind of like tryharding and like really min-maxing your comps and stuff, the game gets easier and easier. But in the end game, you do get hit by a curveball with the Dragon Trials, which I made a whole video about the Dragon Trials if you want to check it out. The Dragon Trials were amazing. It was 4 bosses. They repurposed 3 dungeons, which were very, very cool, like the towers. And yeah, you really had to strategize for these dragons. If you just went in blind without knowing what they did, well, most of them, you can get fucked. Like for example, like if you don't have this, you're just automatically dead. Or you really have to like think outside of the box, because I reflect every damage, bitch. So yeah, that's the main bosses were challenging. They were engaging, especially the story ones. Like it goes from like very creative bosses, like the one you fight at the end of the cathedral arc, that has like an egg with things inside the egg, and then there's the heart, and then there's like a heart that you have to kill that's on top of him, and then you have his body. Like the human bosses were very, very interesting. I loved them. Zorba was an interesting boss. So yeah, that's it for the gameplay, the difficulty, the dungeons, the bosses. I'll give the gameplay a solid 8.5 out of 10. Overall, the gameplay is fantastic. Probably like a 9 out of 10, let's be honest. Because yes, the amount of dungeons is unfortunate, but you can't say the game is not good. The game is amazing. And yeah, that's it for the gameplay. In conclusion, I'm gonna give this game a solid 9.5 out of 10. Very close to a perfection, very close to absolute masterpiece. Now it is, in my opinion, a masterpiece. I love this game, even with its flaws. This fantasy, this beautiful fantasy setting with the Persona formula, the Persona vibes, makes for an incredible game. And I'm really excited for the DLC content and obviously for Persona 6 because Atlas keeps cooking. They keep cooking. It was Aquano. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.